lot of stuff happened this past week. Luckily, we dodged some bullets here, but we're going to go into it nonetheless. So this past weekend during our first preseason game, Justyn Ross, Nico Remigio, and Richie James looked the part. These are three guys, well, mainly Richie James and Justyn Ross, that JD and I have been big fans of all offseason, all training camp at least, even before training camp. Nico Remigio, I was a huge fan of him at Fresno State. When we picked him up, I was really excited about that. I did not think he was going to be flashing what he's been flashing, so it's amazing that he has been. But anyway, and they had great games on Sunday. Fast forward to this week, there's a injury bug in the wide receiver room, and kind of scary. We dodged some bullets. Justyn Ross had an apparent knee and hamstring injury. He was carted off. That was the tweet everyone saw. Justyn Ross carted off, but he was in the front seat. We found out after the fact, and then Andy Reid said, "Oh yeah, it's a knee and hamstring. We're still seeing what it is. How bad it is." The next day, he's out in the field. He was fine. Nico Remigio sustained a dislocated shoulder. Has not practiced since. So that's something to keep an eye on as far as that. He was a guy who's fighting for that last receiver spot. And then Smith-Marsette was also carted off with Justyn Ross, groin injury. But however, Ross and Marsette are back, and they were practicing a day later after those injuries. Nothing serious, but the receiver depth is an interesting one because we've talked about how deep we have it and how young this receiver depth is. However, if all these guys are getting injured, plus Tony's already out with his meniscus tear or partial meniscus tear, it's kind of interesting that so far in the season we have so many nicks and bruises to this wide receiver group, and that's scary. So my question to you is, Teja, what do you make of the injuries that we're already seeing in the wide receiver room, and what would you attribute that to? I guess because we're seeing injuries all over the place, and every year it seems like it's getting worse and worse and worse. What would you attribute the injuries to, the injury bug to that you're seeing? But also, what did you make of their play on Sunday against the Saints?
Attributing it to, I just think it's bad luck. It's not like it's not a case where a guy like missed camp and comes back and goes full speed and gets injured. You know what I mean? I don't think you can really pinpoint, why it's happening. I just think it's bad luck, really. With Justyn Ross, I guess he's had some, background in that. But, I don't think it's anything having to do with their history, or I think it's just bad luck. With Tony, it's a string of bad luck, maybe, but that's not what we're talking about right now in this situation. Overall, I think I'd be a lot more concerned if we still had like a top-heavy receiver group, like we did with Tyreek. When we had Tyreek and a bunch of dudes, we'd be screwed if Hill went down. Every time I'd see Hill after a play kind of do that whole like limp run off the field, I'd be like, great. We cannot afford that, because it was at that point, it was pretty much Hill or bust on our team. But right now, it's weird because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I wouldn't be surprised if 3 or 4 of the receivers became our number one by year end, right? I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Which isn't ideal because I know teams are obsessed over having the guy, the number one. But we're also seeing way more teams nowadays have like 2 stars in their team. You got, Waddle and Hill. You got Higgins in Cincinnati as the number 2. With so many guys getting banged up and throughout the season, it's good to have a bunch of guys capable of stepping up and being that number one. So receiver is one of the few positions I'm not that concerned with having little nicks. And I think we're going to be cautious with them all year. I think I read a report we're not going to rush Tony's day by day, and we're not going to rush him back by any means. Good. You don't need to. We have so many. When we're talking about, there's a lot of different conversations with Chiefs, mostly Chris Jones, but the other one would be like receiver and how deep we are and who's going to make it. And that's a good problem to have, especially when you have a lot of little bumps and bruises here and there that are keeping guys out a couple days. I'm happy with it. I think we're looking good with guys like Moore, Ross, and Rice. Ross looked good in the game. I know his TD catch was big, but the other one, the sideline, it was a sideline throw, I think, right?
Yeah, it was a hitch on the sideline.
Yeah, that was a more impressive route to me. I think he looked great on that one. Sky, I hope to see more of this weekend, more reps. And MVS, we already know what he offers. I don't think he has to really show anything in camp or in preseason games. Rice had the drop and a false start, but other than that, he looked good. And it was his first real action in the NFL. So, if he has little jitters, I'm not that concerned about it. growing pains and nicked up, I'm okay with. I'm not okay with like big time injuries when we saw carted off. After a while, though, I will say we're going to be less concerned with carted off because it seems like these guys get carted off when they have cramps now.
Yeah.
So like I'm not I chalk it up to another wait for Rappaport to report on a bad injury before I get freak out anymore because these guys are being carted off for everything.
Yeah, it's that hill they have at St. Joe. They don't want the guys to walk up that hill. They want them to like take the cart up if they have like any kind of thing, which
Yeah.
it makes sense. But now
You
it's
see that around the NFL too.
what's that?
You see that around the NFL too. Like guys just get carted off for like small injuries now.
Yeah, I guess for me it's like one of those things now because we've been so ingrained to when you hear carted off, that means oh shit, something bad happened. But now it's
Yeah.
like wait, like no, that doesn't mean anything. Just wait. But with Justyn Ross, with his background, obviously his spinal thing wasn't a football injury, so that's one thing everyone always says it's not an injury; it's something he had. But like with his ankle, his foot thing, that was really the only injury, nagging injury he had. So like not really much of an injury history there. He's got a history, a medical history, not really much of an injury history there. But yeah, when you see Justyn Ross carted off, like oh shoot, like what does that mean? And then you hear more like oh no, he was riding in shotgun. Oh no, like it's just preventative. They didn't want him to walk up the hill. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is interesting. We are so deep, and like it with specifically Sky, Rice, and Ross. One of those three may emerge as our number one receiver. It wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't surprise anybody if it's either one of those guys. And the crazy thing about that is this Ross is like an undrafted guy. So the fact that we're saying right now, it wouldn't surprise me if he looks like the number one receiver by the end of the season. It's like, did we struck gold? And it looks like it so far. And what I want to see this weekend, and we can get into that more later, but like what I want to see this weekend, I want to see what Ross did with Buechele. I want to see that with Mahomes and the ones, and Mahomes and the ones are supposed to play the first half, which I don't see them playing the whole first half, but they'll play a lot more than they played last week. Hopefully Ross gets inserted in that lineup. Richie James, another guy who looked really good, another guy that JD and I were been big fans of. I'm really excited about what he can do in this offense. He looked great with Daniel Jones, and we know how average we think Daniel Jones is. He looked amazing with Daniel Jones last year. He looked great the last weekend, and I know it was weird how they kept trying to give him like the corner route to the back of the end zone. A 5'10" guy, we're trying to get a corner route to him. Hey, it worked out. He scored
in a row.
Yeah, he scored a touchdown though. So I mean, obviously it worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting route for that kind of guy. But it shows he can do the underneath stuff, and he can also do some of that. But yeah, I love what I see from Richie James. I think Richie James is one of those guys you can get him late in your fantasy drafts. And I think he can have a sneaky like good year as far as like being a PPR type guy, like a nice possession guy. I think he's going to look great. I think Sky Moore is going to look great, but I think people are going to overdraft Sky Moore just because he's got the name and high draft pick. He's been with the offense for another year. Yep. But yeah, I'm excited about the receiver group. Yeah, it sucks that. And I will say, you mentioned the Tyreek Hill days where like when he went down, it's like, oh shit, like we have a bunch of other guys, like these guys, like Demarcus Robinson, Albert Wilson types. I'm not really excited about that. I'm scared. With this, we have a lot of unproven guys. So when you have one guy go out, it's like, man, okay, well, these other guys better step up. The hype we've been hearing about them, they better step up. And I'm not so much scared about it. It's more like after going through what we did last year, specifically in the playoffs, when we had the injury bug in the receiver room and Mahomes was making do with Marcus Kemp. I think that's what everyone doesn't really care about the receiver room as much, as far as like we don't need a number one guy. As long as we have a bunch of competent guys out there, Mahomes will be fine. And I think that's with that Super Bowl run. That's what it was good for. You saw like Mahomes made do with. They were trotting Jody Fortson out there with that giant cast in his elbow, and Marcus Kemp out there, a receiver, like, oh, we just beat the Bengals with those guys. I think we'll be fine. So, like, I think all these guys are going to be great. I really love the receiver room. I love Nico Remigio. I think he's got a shot to make the team. I think there's a sneaky shot. This is the one thread at you. Think he makes the team over Justin Watson? Not Justin Ross. I think Justin Ross is a lock. You think Justin Watson? There's a chance. But also with a dislocated shoulder, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with?
So we're assuming Tony's IR to start the season, or
no? I think Tony will be on the. I think Tony will be on the roster because I think he'll play week 2. I think he'll be on the roster.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to rush him back, but I think he'll be back week 2 or week 3. I don't think it's going to be long enough for them to put him on IR or PUP or anything like that.
Would you be surprised if he was?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Too much back and forth on it. Initially, they said, "Oh yeah, he'll be back by week 1." Then there was that weird like Schefter report. "Oh yeah, Pacheco and him will be ready for week 1." And then this week, the assistant GM was like, "Yeah, well, there's no timeline on it. He's getting back." It's like that's just
Trending the wrong way, though.
trending the wrong way. But when we had Dr. Chow on our show, he was like, "Yeah, I don't know if there's any reason to rush him back." So it's like, well, okay, maybe week 2, week 3, because he was adamant. Dr. Chow was adamant about week 2.
Okay. Okay, well then in that case, then Tony, Sky, Rice, MBS, 4 definites,
Yep.
right? Richie James,
Yes.
5th definite at this point.
Yep.
So then it comes down to, you think Ross is definite? That you're
Oh,
saying?
yeah, I think he's a definite. It comes down to really, do you think they're going to keep 7 receivers? That's what it comes down to. They're not keeping 8. There's no chance to keep 8 receivers.
No. And so just 2 questions. Are they going to keep 7? And is the 7th Watson or Remigio?
Yeah. And this is also pending Remigio comes back from this dislocated shoulder, because obviously dislocated shoulder is no joke, especially as a receiver who has to do this. And I don't know. He's made.
If we kept 7, it would be Watson.
You don't think Remigio's got a chance?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think so either. But who knows? I think he had a chance, and if this dislocated injury is, if it keeps him out of this, like he doesn't play tomorrow, which I don't think he's going to, with only a couple days after a dislocated shoulder. If he's out tomorrow, I think it's done. I think he'll probably be on the practice squad. I think it's a lock practice squad.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out the best clips from Chief Concerns. And if you prefer to listen to the show, subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.